Let's call the June meeting of the Tree and Landscape Advisory Committee to order. And we have an agenda that was set out to us, and the first thing on the agenda mentions the minutes from the last meeting. Did anybody get a chance to look those up or punch them up and read them and see if they represented what we did at that meeting?
Yes.
Do I hear a motion for the approval of the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second it. They're so long.
Any discussion? I know, I saw. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
The next thing on our agenda is a community link and city volunteer program, and I think we have Julie McQuaid with us, and maybe we're going to hear a little presentation about something. We didn't know about this.
I'm actually going to show you the site because it is now live. Please bear with me. So I have to get this projector back on. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am the Community Outreach Coordinator for the City of Fayetteville. That includes Fayetteville Forward, the neighborhoods, and the city volunteer program, in addition to anything else you can kind of lump under community outreach. We've been in the process of working on a interactive web tool for the community to get involved in volunteerism and other things that are going on that allows for more flexibility than the official city page. So it's a website for the community. And we are in what we call phase 2, which means we are getting public on board to start using it and different organizations. We're not ready to do a big public launch yet, but we think we've got most of the issues worked out, and so we're trying to get people to start using it. Now this is the city's website, and once we do a public launch, the reason I started with this is you will see a button up here that says community link. So people will be able to find it very easily. And when they click that, what they will come to is this page. Now this is a slideshow, different pictures and events that are going on. And this covers the main areas that people are interested in when it comes to getting involved. Or if they just aren't sure what they want to do, we're trying to cover that too. So there are different ways that this site could actually apply to your mission as an advisory committee. The first that I want to show you, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because there's a lot to cover. But one of the ways, looking to volunteer. As a committee, if you and this page will come up here in just a second. If you have a project that needs volunteers, you can put out an opportunity on here requesting the volunteers. This merges with the United Way database also, so it's visible, pretty widespread. In addition to putting out opportunities for volunteers, this is where people that are looking to volunteer will come and try to find something that they want to do. You can also, if in the future there is an opening on this advisory committee, that opening can be posted here under board connections. And if you're looking for items, we aren't doing the cash donation, but if you are looking for items for a project or something that you're doing in the future, you can post it on here, and so other organizations or people that are looking to donate something or find a way to get involved, as a committee you would be able to post any of those on there. And I think I have an example one posted. I don't have many items listed yet. Now, yeah, actually there are quite a few. This merges with the Northwest Arkansas United Way database also. So if somebody goes to their site, they will also see your opportunities, our opportunities. So that is kind of a quick overview of what is in the volunteer portion. The second button from that main page, if it will go to it. Yep, it's just a little slow. This is how to get involved. This is probably the part of the entire site that I think you guys will find most useful. People can go, anybody can go on here. You do not have to register to get information off of this, to find out about events that are going on, to view something on the calendar, or to see what's being discussed on the site. Everything that's posted is given a tag, so anything that has been tagged with green initiatives would show up just by clicking on that. Community events, same thing. Anything that's been posted that has that kind of category, and when you post something, you're given that option. So this is everything that people can see without having to register. Now, people that register, in fact, they can even see the group directory, and I went ahead and added your committee as a group. Right now, of course, there's nothing on there. Now,
What sort of activities would be there?
you can put anything from meeting announcements to general information, educational information.
Does educational mean like tree lists and things?
You can do any of that. This is not restricted as far as this is for the community. There are certain user guidelines that we ask people to follow, and it's basically no solicitation for commercial. And you can kind of see them real quickly. Be respectful. Not promote or endorse any person or organization that's considered commercial, for-profit, religious, or political advocacy. Anything else, this is open to the community to use. So your committee could post native tree lists or event announcements or projects that you're wanting to kind of get the word out. And again, people do not have to register to get that information.
I think our name has been changed.
Okay.
You can ask Greg.
Yeah, I will. Then, if you are, actually, let me use a different login here so you can see what you would see. Sorry, too many passwords. That was not the right one. Okay. Okay, if somebody logs in, once again, you can see I'm logged in. You can have, a personal profile, lots of things similar to Facebook or any of the other social media, but you can have a member of your group administer that group page, manage that group page. Of course, anybody that asks to join the group is allowed to, if they're registered.
It's like following a group.
It is. It's just like, and you can be notified. Anybody that signs up can choose if they want to be notified. So every time something's posted, they can choose to be notified by email. And of course, we've got a full member directory too. So you can invite people that are out there that you may not have noticed that your group is out there. Or if they've, commented or discussed something, then you can invite them to join your group, or they can just go ahead and interact on it anyway. So this is what basically, if you're a registered user, you would, I take that, hang on, sorry. They would go here, and then they would be able to hit new post, and they'd be able to put something that would not only show up under latest posts, but they can assign it to a group, or they can assign it to one of these. All of this stuff that we have on here is fed to the Facebook page. We have a Facebook page created just for Community Link, but it also feeds to the city one and to the Twitter accounts automatically. So you're not having to put the information out a bunch of different places. It does it automatically for you. And then the last big piece of this is the idea and innovation portion. And how this could be useful is you could solicit ideas from the community, or just if you have a project or an idea and you want input, then you can post it on here and other people can discuss it, vote on it, and all of these comments and this stuff is also fed to Facebook, to Twitter, and there's an email subscription so people can sign up if they want to be notified. So that's, there's a lot to it. And I am more than happy to give, training to anybody that wants to use it. Does anybody have any questions?
It's available to do those things with right now?
Yes, this is live.
Okay. Thanks.
Who is the webmaster currently?
Me. I'm kind of all of it right now.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Also on our agenda is another person, Audra Herrera, the volunteer community organizer, another webpage I think we're going to learn about, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, once again, my name is Audra Herrera. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I'm here to talk to you guys about Commonplace Fayetteville. As community leaders yourselves, I hope this is something that you guys will be excited about too. I'm pretty much dedicating my summer to this site. It's basically, to put it simply, like an online bulletin board that the community can join for free. You can do a lot on this website. Say you lost your cat and you want to let your neighbors know about it, or you're having a yard sale. Organizations such as the Tree and Landscape Advisory Committee can create a community feed and put out any sort of information that you guys want to get out either to each other or to the community. So kind of just to show you around a little bit, this is what the website looks like. It's really easy to create your own profile, name, email address, and street address. We do ask for a street address just to verify that you are a part of the community. However, no one will ever see this address. We won't ever share it with anybody, and if you Google it, you can't find your address from our site. And you can log in with your Facebook account. Okay, so this is what the website looks like. You can see right now we have 100 users on it, which is pretty good considering it's only been live for about a week. You can post anything on here at all. I mean, somebody needs a repair for a dehumidifier. But more importantly to you guys would probably want to use community announcements just to get information out about any of your guys' events or anything that you guys are doing. Or if you wanted to go to a community feed and create your own community feed, you can see we already have a feed going on there. This is a great way to get people to subscribe to getting your information. Again, like Julie said, I'm also here to help you guys. So if you guys need any help at all, either navigating the website or getting signed up or anything like that, just please let me know.
Any questions? Anybody?
This is absolutely free. They're doing beta testing here. This site was developed by some Harvard students.
Will there be a link to this site on the previous site we've just looked at?
Yes.
Sure, Julie.
There will be.
Okay. Thanks, Audra.
Thank you.
You want to leave maybe some of your half sheets here, and if they're interested, they can pick one up.
Yeah, I'll leave like a half sheet with the URL on there.
I know we'll be needing to use these sites. We just haven't talked about it to figure out how we're going to use them yet. So I think that's too much for us to deal with today compared to the other things we have to think about. Don't you guys think? So let's go on. All right, then we're down to the third item on our agenda, and James Gibson has a native plant presentation here for us, and he needs to be near a microphone, I think. You want to sit here, and I'll move over here?
What about this one? Ah,
Does it work?
are you going to turn
Okay,
it?
yes,
Yes.
it's great, great.
Is this going to go away? I will turn that off.
So someone can sit here if they like, but you should be near a microphone. Okay, go Nancy.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. I only made, excuse me, I had to run up the steps. I only made one copy, and if anybody wants a copy, this. I can email it to anybody here at the group because I'm trying to go as much paperless as possible. My native shrub is the common name is called sweet shrub, and the botanical name is Calycanthus floridus, and it's a native shrub to the southeast of the United States. It's native from Virginia down to Florida, over to Mississippi and northward, sort of in the southeast corner of the United States. It's a deciduous shrub, and it gets relative or about 4 foot to 6 foot tall, depending on where you have it, as much as 8 foot in some places if it likes where it's growing. It's coarse textured. It has large green leaves. It really stands out against other small leaf species. It's really easy to grow. It does take a little bit of water, but once you get it established, it's pretty drought tolerant. I actually have one growing in my yard, and I've never watered it, and my yard gets pretty dry like everybody else's. I mean, I water it occasionally, I guess, but not very often, so it does just fine. It has these very nice kind of brown to rust-colored flowers, and they smell kind of unusual. The best way I could describe it is it smells like stale beer, but which, I mean, is not the best smelling shrub, but the flowers are very interesting. They're kind of coarse and stiff, and they bloom pretty much the entire year, but mostly in the spring. In the fall, it turns a beautiful yellow, so it's got great fall color. It really doesn't have any pests at all. Again, it's native, so it's already adapted to this region. I don't know if it grows in our forest, but I would imagine it probably does in some places. It takes, where I grow it is pretty shaded, but it'll take full sun to shade, so it's pretty adaptable in that area. Let me think of anything else about it. Oh, it's kind of suckers, so it does spread a little bit, but not too much. It's not real aggressive in that area, so you may have a few sprouts stick their little heads up around it, so you can actually cut those off and propagate those. So all in all, it's a really great shrub. You don't see it very often. You're seeing it more and more because more people get into natives, but I haven't seen them too many around. But again, it's a great native shrub, easy to take care of, and it's a great addition to anybody's garden if they wanted to try one.
There's a yellow flowered variety too.
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah.
What would you repeat the name?
Well, it's called sweet shrub is a common name, but Calycanthus floridus.
Thanks, James.
Thank you. And again, if you want to send this information to you, I can. Just let me know.
Are you sure you're not watering it with stale beer?
Well, I can't guarantee that, but
James, they want you to pass that around so they can
okay, sure, you bet.
And we do have a tradition of starting our meetings with a presentation of a native plant or shrub. We've got had a few presentations. Who would like? Is anyone ready to do it next week, or the next month, or the month after that? Anybody available for such a thing? See, Lacey did it. Everybody's pretty much taking care of everything on it.
I'll do it for the month of August, but I'll be gone in July.
In July.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm afraid I am too.
August.
Yeah, I could do it in July.
Could you?
Sure.
Well, thanks so much. Betty?
I'll do September.
Good, just a little schedule there for a while. Good. The next thing on our agenda is, we talked last month about, it would be nice if when we have our celebration of trees, to also give out some awards to people that have done good jobs with trees or landscaping or some aspect of our community. And Shannon's been working on a method of doing that, and he's handing those out now. He'll be explaining to us what his suggestions.
I only have 9 copies. I'll send everybody a copy when I have there's the rest. I was tasked with going around and looking about the country and the world actually to see the progressive communities and what they've done to initiate awards programs for sustainable landscaping in their communities. I think this is a great opportunity for Fayetteville to really reflect our values as a community. And I think the Face of Business is a great place to start, but there are other opportunities as well. You can follow along with this. It's pretty much an outline of what I'll be talking about. Looking around the country, the evaluation criteria varies greatly. varies with climatic conditions, resource limitations, local political climate and culture. That has to do with rainfall, water, uses of soil quality, flooding potential, green initiatives, and infrastructure. We don't lack any of that here in Fayetteville. It ranges from a purely aesthetic to a best management practices and sustainable permaculture. Okay, some examples I pulled up just to give you an idea of the range we're talking about here. Bentonville, on the left-hand side of the spectrum, they have an award for the Commercial Business Landscaping of the Month. It's issued monthly, and very simple criteria: consistent maintenance, tasteful creative landscaping, good use of seasonal color, and overall appearance. As we move further right towards a more sustainable, in-depth idea of what it means to develop good landscaping practices, we can look at Tamarack, Florida's 9 Principles of Green Initiative certification. Those include the right plant at the right place, and that's the use of native species, which can be planted to increase shade and reduce cooling costs, and filter parking lot runoff, as just a few examples. These are not all inclusive. Water efficiently could be the use of drip irrigation, rain barrels, or low maintenance fauna. Of course, fertilizing appropriately, which can include organic methods, limited nitrate loading, non-removal of grass clippings, and of course using that for compost. Number 4 would be using mulch, which conserves soil moisture and reduces runoff in otherwise paved areas. Attracting wildlife with feeders or use of non-harmful substances are only a few. Controlling yard pests responsibly through biodiversity and organic methods. And recycling plant materials for compost is one example. Reducing stormwater runoff, and that takes precaution against erosion of the soil. It's a good focal point with our recent floods. And of course, protecting the waterfront. These are not necessarily all-inclusive, but a good example of cities across the nation that are moving in other directions to promote these sort of sustainable landscapes. One possibility, as we look into areas that we can implement, would be the use of multiple awards, not just confined to an award, but getting people accustomed to the idea with a bronze based on a point system, moving up to a silver, and then a gold. Would be a good way to get into the community, have people not so intimidated by all of these criteria that can be used. So that's one idea. And then, of course, awards could also be divided by location and/or district. Some examples are commercial business, downtown squares, the entertainment district, college avenue schools, neighborhoods, and anything else. The reason for this is because as you look around our landscape in Fayetteville, we have different resources, different variations on what people can do with their landscapes. And so I think it's important that we take those into consideration as we develop a method to award these businesses and individuals. So the conclusion is that there are multiple considerations and options to initiate and develop an awards program which require a devoted subcommittee. So are there any questions? Yes?
When you talk about awards, would this simply be a title like we say, okay, we're giving this business the Bronze Award for June? Or would you actually have some kind of plaque? Would you have some kind of printed thing? Would there be any sort of monetary award, or would it be simply a title?
I was thinking about that, and that's a good question. I think first and foremost, it needs to be visible to the public. Mm-hmm. To show that this business has gone above and beyond the ordinance, mm-hmm. and they're trying to accomplish these goals. I also think that if we can utilize our new website technology, we can recognize these businesses. It's good for some free advertising, but most of all, it perpetuates, it develops propensity to move beyond ordinance and look towards greater ways, and it allows us to be influential in what ways these businesses can improve their existing infrastructure, their existing landscapes, to move to higher level of awards, mm-hmm. and recognition as well. Yes?
You know, I was thinking it'd be nice if there was something that...
Identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Christine Haller, and I'm with the Leverett PTO. I'm the landscape committee person there.
Hold on, I want to say something about Christine. She also has a degree in horticulture and soil sciences.
And integrated, I have a master's in integrated pest management. So I think it would be nice if there was something that sort of talked about collaborative efforts, because you know, in the landscaping that we've been doing at Leverett the last few years, there's been, sorry, I've got rubber bands in my mouth. So a lot of collaboration, which I think would be nice to celebrate in the city, you know, between, I mean, all sorts of people over the years have helped with different, creating different things happening there at Leverett, you know, from the rain garden that's there to, we got a $5,000 grant from Lowe's, the Toolbox for Education grant, and things like that. So if there could be things that kind of, you know, there's so much divisiveness in everywhere, so it would be nice if something was, like, look at how people came together. I mean, the city of Fayetteville donated several of the trees in the front of the school, and an Eagle Scout was involved, and so, I'm not trying to say Leverett, I'm just saying that there's many other examples.
No, that should be one of the criteria, maybe, or one of the things they get points for if they collaborated, and
Yeah.
rather than just paid a landscaper and got it done.
Yeah, when I was thinking business, you know, maybe that's, you know, takes out the wallet, but if you're bringing people together, I think that helps.
Absolutely, and it's a great opportunity for student outreach programs too, to go in there and educate the students, let them take care of their own landscaping, learn something, grow their own food periodically. I think with our infrastructure here with Fayetteville Forward and all the programs we have, the amazing internet, you know, that we have going on, I don't think Fayetteville will go any other way other than a collaborative effort, especially with different committees with the city and Fayetteville Forward and the Environmental Action Committee. These are all people that would eventually be involved, and I think this is a great way to do that. Just having awards.
Tooting Fayetteville's horn, like, look at, you know, people are looking to access Fayetteville or whatever, things that are going on here, and
absolutely, I agree. Anybody else have any questions, suggestions, opinions?
I think what I thought is that you were going to bring us a form, a couple of 3 forms that people could submit nominations, and with some of these things listed, that you, as a suggestion to us, whether we should suggest take it or leave it or change it or whatever.
I think
that's a whole big job.
I think the first step in this process is to put forth a motion to develop a subcommittee. So we can get the criteria in order and develop an agenda, develop a common purpose, mission statement, before we move to that step of actually having the forms and submissions when we really, it is a big job.
We haven't agreed on Betty.
Yeah, I meant to set up a subcommittee. Yeah, I would like to make that motion.
I second that motion.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to set up a subcommittee on figuring out what sort of awards we should have for people. And is there a motion and a second? Is there any discussion about that?
I just have a question. Is there anything like this currently in place from the city of Fayetteville or anything? I mean,
the neighborhood council does a beauty marker award. I'm not sure how active that is, but they're giving that out once or twice a year.
And this would eventually need to go before the council, correct? Greg, any motion to develop a city-wide award program would be something that would need to be put within the code, or?
It wouldn't need to be codified as far as put into the landscape ordinance or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just assume the subcommittee could just be set up to figure out what to do from here, and then after that, it would be presented, like,
That
do you want to
sounds
do
great.
this, do you want to do that, do you want to incorporate other people, whatever.
That would be
you know.
perfect. I think the question would be, though, if we vote to have a subcommittee, we need to know up front if there are some people that are willing to be on that subcommittee, don't you think?
I'm assuming he would.
We got one.
I'm overloaded.
Well, and also Fayetteville and Bloom does a pride award, but if we don't have this kind of specification in it, we just present a sign that they can put on the landscape, so.
We need to have something more broad-based, more inclusive, and something that's out there to the businesses, and whether we decide to extend it to the neighborhoods, the schools, the government buildings.
Well, and that's what we do.
Yeah,
I mean, it's,
that's what we need to
businesses
discuss.
get it, schools
Right.
get it, but it's a total different kind of.
And do you think our target time to have this available and ready to award is the celebration of trees, October 15? Is that kind of, do you see it needing to be coinciding with that, or?
I see it a little bit more involved with that. I see that there are specifications need to be worked out. For instance, are we going to differentiate between areas that are, this word? And I think that needs to be addressed if we want to make it successful. If we want to make it broad-based, and we want to establish a system that is provides a competitive spirit among the businesses, but within their own micro demographic. Like for instance, College Avenue doesn't look the same as the square. The square doesn't have the same resources or landscape as the downtown. I think that we need to be specific about this, and then have a committee that goes and have criteria in place to judge, what we're looking for. And I think it's a more of a long-term project. I think it's going to, basically at some point, when you look at cities like Portland or Montreal, Greensboro, North Carolina has an excellent program, and they get serious. I mean, they really, the businesses go out there, and the citizens, for all intents and purposes, seem to really pay attention to what people are doing there and how they're using their resources. And I think that represents Fayetteville, just with
The kind of place we are.
the kind of place we are.
Okay. Any more discussion as to whether we should have a subcommittee on this subject? If I call the question, then all right. Shall we vote on whether or not we should have a subcommittee on this, on whether to have a tree ordinance subcommittee? Tree
Awards,
awards
city
group.
awards.
Right. Okay, all in favor of having a subcommittee for making it tree awards, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All not in favor, say no. We're all in favor of doing it, okay? Now I think we need to maybe set that committee if we are going to do that. We have Shannon available to do it. Who else would like to help on that committee?
I can help.
James. Okay. I'll show up if you want me to.
Sure. No, what about people outside of our own committee?
That is true. We need to remember, Greg always reminds us that there are people in the community are certainly, we would love to have someone in the community to help. Maybe Christine would
Yeah,
help.
sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Wonderful.
All righty.
Thank you.
That's great. That's a good start then. That was what our websites could be for in the future, soliciting someone to help us on one of these committees or one of these projects. But right now, so are you going to be the chair of that little subcommittee?
I would.
And so you'll organize people and get us, shall we have some place to talk about this?
I will. I will. I won't be. We won't be starting this until after July, because I will be gone the rest of this month in July. But in August, I plan to really move forward with it.
Is that okay with
Is
the
that-
members?
Sure, yeah, that's fine, because a lot of people go on vacation. I got lots of stuff to do. Greg, on this count, what was the question I was going to ask? When the subcommittee meets, does it need to meet like our meeting in a public forum?
It should, yes.
Okay, so we'll need to kind of arrange that, because we just can't go to somebody's house and talk about it, I'm guessing. Okay.
If there are two or
just
more
email.
members, if there are two or more members
Okay.
of the committee that have been appointed by the council, it has to be in a public forum.
Right.
But it could
Okay.
be a coffee shop.
It could be a coffee shop, as long as the press is notified.
Or the public could just.
Yeah,
say
we
they
got
want
to
to.
make sure
we just need to contact the city clerk and let her know. Okay. Okay.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
Thank you. That's great, Shannon. Thank you so much. Okay, and then we have a little bit of money in our account, and I think Greg's going to tell us that the city may have some rules about what we can and can't do with money that we gather through our endeavors. Have you found
When
out?
when you say account, we do not have an account. We have a file folder in a drawer in my desk
An envelope.
with an envelope with money.
All righty, that's
Oh,
good.
kidding,
This
Well-
is still there.
We're gonna hopefully relieve you of that soon.
That's fine.
The city is in the process of setting up a separate account. It's gonna be something along the lines of urban forestry donations. And we will be able to take that money and place it into that account. And
Should I bring it to the next meeting?
Allison, you got a feel for?
No, if you don't mind, if you could bring it down to the Parks and Recreation office, because we need to receive it into the account and get it. to the
Where's
business
that?
office.
Where's that office?
We're at 1455 South Happy Hollow,
Okay, and when can I do that?
anytime between 8 and 5.
Okay.
And, let's see, it's not on here, policy and procedure for spending donation money. I don't know if we want to talk about it today, but sometime we might want to talk as a group about when we can use that money and for what purposes. I think we have a kind of a long agenda today. I'd like to put that off till another time if that's okay. It's only $89 or something like that. Do you guys want to talk about that today, about how we can spend it, or do you want to wait till another time? You okay to wait?
Another time.
Okay,
You'll
good.
need a motion to do that.
Oh, a motion to wait?
I so move.
I second. All righty. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. And all opposed? All right, we'll put that on till another time, the procedure part.
Also, Nancy, I wasn't here right at the start of the meeting. Did anyone make the amendment for the addendum that you had sent to me?
No,
Do you still want to add that, or do you want to carry that?
I think there's plenty of time to have it, so let's do add it. Did everyone see that we had an agenda sent to us, and we noticed that there was one part missing to the agenda, and Greg sent out the second part, which was James's presentation on invasive plant policies of other cities. And would you guys like to have that as part of the presentation today? James prepared it for us.
Such that it is.
All in favor of having that on the agenda, say,
Did I see?
do you have to have a motion?
Yeah, to add it to the agenda.
I so moved.
Here's a move.
Second.
All right, all right. All right, any discussion about that? If there's no discussion, how many people would like to put that addendum on our agenda for today? Say aye, if you would.
Aye.
Nay, if you would not like to. Okay. So that will
That'll
be on.
We'll move that to item number 7. prior to
Okay, I
subcommittee.
put it kind of with community education outreach, but whatever.
Oh, okay, that's what you wanted.
It's kind of with that in a way, because, and my.
Okay.
Alrighty, so now we're down to, Greg is going to tell us about, this is a formal meeting that we're supposed to have, isn't it, related to tree escrows or something?
This is a preview of it. You would take those down. Want to look on that? What I want to just kind of brief you on, what's going to happen next month, because this is kind of a preview. What's coming around is a set of aerials that show tree locations to where the first 2 sheets that you have are locations for this year's tree planting. These are, one is called Salem Heights Phase 1 and Phase 2 subdivision. The second one is called Copper Ridge subdivision. Those green dots with the black circle in the center represent where trees are going to be planted in those subdivisions. And what's going to be happening between now and our next meeting is that there will be some public announcements made that these trees will be planted in these neighborhoods. And so what the committee will be charged with doing is that I will make a presentation to you regarding these different neighborhoods, the tree species and things like that. And then we're going to be hearing from the public. So if anybody comes from one of these subdivisions and wants to discuss the trees, species, tree location, anything about this project, it's an opportunity for the public to have input to the design process. And so at the end of all the comments that are taken in and so forth, the Tree and Landscape Committee will need to make any motions to either take, accept these plantings as is, or any recommendations for changes, to add those changes, which then you would send, those changes would go to me and I would make those changes. So, yes, Becky?
Yeah, one question, I'm just looking at it. I'm assuming all the utility poles are underground in these neighborhoods?
Yes. These are all newer neighborhoods,
Okay.
so everything that is built
Because I was
in here-
looking, utility pole, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, they're all underground, so
Yes.
therefore.
Yeah, in this
okay.
location, I actually drove this location when I was the city of Salem Springs. I used to drive this road almost every day. And there's a huge, this is great because the green space is really big between the curb and the sidewalk. It's like 10 feet or
Yes,
more.
it's
It's
really
really a great
big.
place for trees.
Like last year, I had one that was actually 20 feet away.
Yeah.
Some of them are huge.
Yeah, this is a good place
The
to
last
plant
2
them.
pages of this show 2 plantings that we did this year. And so this kind of gives you an idea when this is finally done, it's going to say the species, and it's also going to get a number to it, and then it says JMA on the first one, which stands for Jennings Mills Addition, and that's the name of this property. It's when it came in for development, that's where it was. And then we got Salem Meadow subdivision. It shows the tree species, where they're located around there. So once this is done, you'll actually be getting a sheet next week that actually has the tree species on it and everything like that.
And that's what I was going to ask Esau to show what people will be learning, that during the next month they'll be learning what the trees are mostly,
Yes.
and we will too.
Yeah.
And so when we show up here, people can come and talk about their trees.
Yeah, what I'll be doing is I'll be filling out the finals on these for tree species in these subdivisions, and then I'll load that up into this system, and then it'll show up on each one of these aerials that you'll get to review.
Any questions?
Just real fast, when you plant trees like this, what is your maintenance program after they're planted? Do you try to go water them every now and again?
Well, these
Or
are
get
done
owners
under
to
a
do it?
contract. The contractor is responsible for the first 90 days of maintenance. And we are in the process of tightening up our maintenance specs to add a little more watering to the system and stuff like that. But then after that, it falls to the Parks and Recreation Department.
Is this a POA? Do you know?
I don't remember if this particular one has a POA. Unfortunately, that information is not easily attainable.
Is that right?
Yeah, I
It's
checked.
registered with the
Julie
city.
that was here earlier, she has deals with the neighborhood council and other things like that. And I did speak with her about trying to locate POAs and who's, current president and contact and stuff like that. And unfortunately, there's no listing anywhere, any of us have been aware of anyway.
Okay.
Okay, any more on that subject?
How big are they going to be? Sorry.
The trees?
Yeah.
Trees will be 2-inch caliber.
Okay.
Okay, our
Paul
next
Burlap?
sub-
Well, I put a preference in there for air-pruned containerized plants, but this past year, nobody showed up with any of those. And then the second criteria was to be containerized, because we were doing a lot in the summer. And then as they moved into the fall planting, they could use fall burlap. So that's the, and this one will be projected to start in, the planting of it will be anywhere from October to December.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next subject, 7A, was the education outreach program, and the only thing we've really been talking about in the last little while for education outreach is whether to do something about invasive plants. And so I thought maybe that's why James's talk might be good to put there. Does that sound logical to you at all? Is that okay with you guys? He's going to tell us about, he's checking to other cities and seeing what sort of policies they have in place related to invasive plants in case we might want to work on ours or make one of some sort. So what have you learned?
Well, you know, hear me pretty good. I started my search and I thought it would be pretty easy, but it turned out not to be that easy because you can type in invasive species city ordinance and you really don't get much, and you can type in invasive plants, all kinds of different things, and you get a lot of different hits on things. I was actually only able to find 3 cities that had actual invasive species ordinances, and that was Portland, Oregon, Chicago, Illinois, and Scottsdale, Arizona. Portland was probably the best one out of all of them. They have an ordinance that classifies invasive species into class A, B, and C. A being the worst, the biggest nuisance, I guess. And so they're actually required to be eradicated. If they're on your property or city property, they're required to be eradicated. Chicago is kind of similar. They don't have a class system, but it just makes it unlawful to have these invasive species on the regulated list. And Scottsdale is kind of similar, but a little less stringent. The thing about these invasive species that I started finding out is actually, I know that we're here. We're a lot. We're pretty concentrated on, I would say, landscape type invasive species that get out, like privet, like the honeysuckle and things like that. The majority of the plants that I found that are on these lists are actually aquatic, and other types of species that I really don't know much about, wetland type species, especially in the Great Lakes area, because of course they have the Great Lakes and they don't want that getting invaded by these species. And every region has their own particular type of species that is invasive. And most of the time it was things that I've never heard of, which I guess makes sense. So, I mean, I was thinking I would go there and see things like privet and that sort of thing. I didn't see any of that. None of that was on any of these lists. Like I say, each area has their own types of plants. Like Florida, they have a really big problem. So what I found in Florida is not a lot of ordinances that had eradication procedures or whatever in them, but they had a lot of ordinances that required the plantings to be native, depending on where you were at. And I got a pretty good site. I'm not going to reach everything, but there were from anywhere from 30 to 75% of the species that were planted had to be native. And that seemed like a pretty good idea, and that was mainly there to keep people from planting invasives and other types of non-indigenous types of plants down there. I went out on the Hawaii site and I didn't find anything. I don't know why. It was just a very hard site to negotiate. But I'm sure that Hawaii probably has a lot of things, because when you have these tropical environments, it seems like the invasives are worse. And I think it's because people have, they buy a lot of potted plants, and then they put them out and they flower, and then they just go wild. So there's that, I would imagine. A lot of other types of ordinances are agriculture, and kind of county-based and state-based. They're not city-based, and they're mainly directed towards agriculture. I know that in Washington County, I believe that it's illegal to have a certain amount of thistle in your pasture. If you go beyond a certain amount, the county, if they see it, they'll come out and they'll tell you to eradicate it. And if you don't, I don't know if you could find or whatever, but it is against the law to have that, because it hurts agriculture. Because if you get cows won't eat thistle, nothing really eats thistle. So if you have a whole pasture full of thistle, then it spreads to everybody else, and then all of a sudden everybody's cow pastures are full of thistle, and they don't like that. So that's what I found a lot of on the state level. Iowa has noxious weeds and a law about a lot of different grasses. Of course, the big one I saw on a lot of lists was Johnson grass. That's been around for a long time, but cows really can't eat Johnson grass as well as other grasses. I forget what it is, but it's at some stages when it's full grown or when it's just sprouting, if the cows eat it, that's actually bad for them. So it's not a really good grass to have in your pasture. The state of Minnesota has the same sort of thing, but it's a lot of aquatic plants, because of course Minnesota has a lot of lakes, a lot of wetlands, so they have a huge list of species there. Same for the state of Maine. They have a lot of legislation about their inland waters. And the state of Maine also, they have an invasive plants advisory committee in the Department of Agriculture. So again, it's all going back to sort of agriculture and that sort of thing. State of Michigan, same thing. And I started searching just city by city to see if I could just find a city, because when I did my broad search, I wasn't getting a lot of direct hits on things. So I started looking at different cities, and I searched Kansas City, Minneapolis, Houston, Seattle, New York City, Washington, D.C., Charlotte, Miami, and none of those cities had an invasive plant ordinance against prohibiting the sale of invasive plants or even an eradication program. But almost every single city has a very nice big website that you can get to through their site about invasives. And there's a lot of really nice ones. So they have a lot of educational programs, but they don't have any kind of ordinance. And my guess is, and this is what I said before, is it gets kind of tough to ban the sale of certain plants. I mean, of course, privet's a big one here. I don't know if you could ban the sale of privet. You might be able to, but it would be hard. Probably at a state level. I started thinking about this, and sometimes I'll get these plant catalogs, and invariably you open them up and they got this, beautiful pictures of these hedges that you can grow in 2 years that are 12 feet tall, and it will say, privet, or like Brex. I don't know if you ever heard Brex or whatever. There's lots of catalogs you can get with plant material. So that stuff's sold nationwide to people thinking they're going to get this incredible plant that grows and makes a beautiful hedge, and so you get a lot of that as well. I don't know if you could stop that. That's sort of interstate. So that's kind of what I found out. I don't know if it's what y'all wanted to hear, and it was really tough to look this stuff up. I mean, it's not something you can just look up and just a list of things comes up like every city. I mean, I was searching, and I also apologize. My computer's turning off about every 30 minutes. I got a problem with my computer, so I had to wait. My CPU heats up, and I got to turn it off, or it turns off, and I can turn it back on. But anyways, I can continue looking through this, because I think our final goal is to try to figure out a strategy to deal with the invasive species. I don't know if I'm really helping with what I'm saying now, but it seems like a pretty tough problem for not just iceberg for a lot of peoples because they don't really have a lot in place.
Speaking of invasive species, I have something small to report. Yesterday, I was walking on the hike and bike trail past the area where you all had done the intervention where you dug out some invasive species and planted some other stuff, and then you put a very nice sign there, right? Well, the sign and its little posts were completely covered with potato vine, which perhaps is an invasive species. So I whacked down quite a bit of it. However, that it's just going to grow back. So anyway, it didn't look good.
I don't want to get off the subject, but there is something to say about that whole thing in a little bit. I mean, as far as that side and the next works discussion. Thanks,
Okay.
Emily. You did good.
Just a sideline there.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments about what James found out related to? Go ahead. Greg.
Well, it's tough a lot of times to find some information about that because the city may not have an invasive ordinance, but they might have something either in their natural area preservation or in their landscaping codes or something like that. So it's not something that is easily found usually.
I agree. I looked some before I even talked to James, and it is hard. But
Well, I think there's a lot of committees like us in some of the biggest cities that have resources that can produce these really nice websites, and they were really great. I mean, I couldn't list them all. Almost every city had one, and they were pages and pages. Great information, list of plants like we would like to see, either banned or not sold or whatever, or for people not to plant them. So I think that's a really good first step because if you try to go through the process of creating an ordinance banning things for sale, I really worry that you're going to get the nurseryman trade, and maybe our guests can speak to that. I mean, nurserymen, they're pretty aggressive in what they can sell. They don't want people telling them what they can and can't sell.
James,
and they would probably
when you were going to do this, though, I used the word policy, not ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really mean I'm glad you did that. We've heard the worst case scenario that the ordinances probably don't work and aren't working in lots of places. But I was hoping that we would learn, let's see, what am I thinking here? Policies, that we have no policy whatsoever really about invasive species except a little thing that you handed out a month ago that had maybe 3 plants listed on it or something in our landscaping code. And we were thinking about doing a public outreach program on invasive plants, but our city has no policy whatsoever on invasive plants. And I was thinking that instead of having educational outreaches on this, a really good way to educate the community on this would be for us to start trying to decide if we have a policy, some kind of educational policy for the nurseries, or maybe something on the web, what plants would we like to have listed on the website to encourage people to buy and to discourage people from buying. Maybe somewhere in our code, just at least pluses, ones that are good and ones that are bad or something. So if we were to start to hone in on a policy of some sort, not an ordinance, of how we would like to proceed with invasive species, categorize them, and what nursery people can do about them, what individual people could do about them, then that would be an education in itself for the community if they followed us at all. If it's something we ever had to present to the city council, people would have to say, what is this? I didn't know there was an invasive plant. What's an invasive plant? And they'd have to get educated on what an invasive plant is. And that would be educational in itself. Any suggestions, comments?
A little bit away from the nursery is, like I say, I live in at the west end of Maple Street, right dead ends, and so that's Markham Hill area. We're pretty covered up with that. I think it's the amber honeysuckle.
Yes.
I hear my neighbors a lot saying we'd like to get rid of it, or just people realizing that it's bad. I think helps people a lot, and we send stuff on the listserv to each other a lot. But like you say, if the city had resources, things you could check out to use to get rid of it, or some kind of, hey, we're gonna have a get rid of it week or month to kill, or I don't know.
But we have to have a policy to say that's bad before we really formally should go into that sort of stuff.
Right.
In my opinion.
Or does the city over time want to do something about the fact that there's hundreds and hundreds of acres getting taken over by this stuff? It's like, do we want to make some stand like it's a lot of work, but we want to go there, or not, or you're on your own, gang, or whatever, somewhere on the spectrum. Or
I think it just comes down to resources.
Because that stuff's got more energy than I do.
Just 2 things is that the educational part of what is an invasive species and why it's an invasive species is a good thing, and the committee can do within itself. Anytime we go to a policy, want to adopt a policy, we've got to work that through the entire city and make sure that everybody's on board with that policy prior to it, being, put out for, looking at it, if we're going to try and codify it as an ordinance, or put it on part of the sustainable yards process, or we put it in the landscape code, whatever we're going to try and look at. But we've got to make sure that the city, different departments who deal with different aspects, are all involved and in part of the process, and so forth. The second thing, going back to the honeysuckle issue, is that we don't have this availability right now, but as we have talked about earlier in meetings, and the changes we're talking about to the committee, the FireWise part of the committee, once we have that and the fire department can reapply for FireWise Community and we get that designation back, Washington County has a chipper that is available for residents to sign out once we become FireWise again. And they could actually take that to their home and yank all that honeysuckle out of there and then just run it through that chipper and make mulch out of it. And so that, talking a little bit about equipment that might be available to people and so forth, that is one thing that is there that is potentially could be available.
Well, on that
once we get through
subject,
this
I think
process.
we should get a lot of weed wrenches and make them available to people too, but to get them out of the ground is the hard part, not the chipping part.
Right.
Yeah.
Those popper things. I want one of those.
Yes,
that
you
stick
can borrow
under-
mine. I have one
Yeah.
to lend to people.
Oh,
That's
really?
why I bought it. Go ahead.
Awesome.
Yes, we just acquired one at our house.
I say, what's your name and what you?
Aubrey Shepherd. We
I-
have one at our house now, and Lauren has been pulling them out, and they wouldn't even haul them off, but we had somebody at the front today. It was over 3 different cans, so big old loads. And we got the large size. I think the ones you had were medium, these weren't great, and they're
Great.
much heavier.
Great.
Pulling all your privet up? That's a lot of privet.
Okay, on the subject of, I guess I call it a cross subject, of whether we should work toward a policy of invasive plants for the city and go through these rings that Greg's talking about. I think it's educational to do that. But if you think we should just keep working as a committee and go with what the general public, with our own gut feeling about what invasive plants are and educate people that way through activities and programs and
Awards.
and awards, little carrots and things.
Nancy,
What do you say?
I just have a suggestion. I think that's great to do this like educational thing and put out information about it on the site and stuff, and the awards would certainly be educational. And but just another thing for us to think about, if we get this tree farm thing going, maybe we could, offer people, rather than going and buying privet, say, come to the tree farm and get a cheaper alternative or something there. If you offer if we sell our trees cheaper than they could get privet, and they knew about it, maybe they would go that direction rather than buying the invasive species. It's just something to think about.
That was one of Shannon's ideas, that we reward people, or maybe somebody that wrote in or talked to Greg once.
Okay.
It's a great idea, but I think to get the tree farm off the ground and get it started, we really need to concentrate on how it benefits the city directly.
Yeah.
And moving towards getting that established. And then if this is like a runaway train and it just is going crazy, we can start to look at other ideas of how we can assist the community with the tree farm.
Yeah.
But an excellent idea. Just don't want to get strayed too far away from, kind of like getting our centralized idea about the tree farm, where we're going, where we're heading, get it established, and then just see how it works.
Sure.
First stubs on the trees is the city. They're going to plant them on trees.
Yeah. I just thought this
I
is the way they're
really
going
do think, I think that you said this earlier, I think the first step is try to organize some sort of educational program, whatever that is, so that people will be aware what is an invasive species, and they walk out to their backyard and see, if they are so inclined, which hopefully if you educate them, they will be aware of it, become aware of it, and they'll go out and maybe pull their own invasive species out or whatever they need to do. And so I think that's the first thing. That seems to be the quickest, easiest, probably the cheapest thing to do. I don't know how we should do that.
All right.
But I know Cindy and Don and several people did presentations at the library, so we had 2 or 3 programs actually on that already.
And we did the
so-
participation one at Frisco. I mean, I feel we've
Yeah.
done one-shot presentations.
Yeah, and that was quite a.
It was wonderful, but how are we going to continue getting the message out in an organized manner?
I
The
think what we
website,
need to do is we need to do another
Series.
series this fall and have an area where we take them out. It was wonderful to have proof film. But let's look at some of these social media sites as well.
Right.
To get a cross-section of the word out, whether it's Facebook or on the city site or whatever. Just different ways to reach people and educate them
Yeah,
about
because
it.
Cindy's Fayetteville and Bloom, I mean, that comes on Facebook, and it just, if everybody could get on that, that's very, I think more people, they can use the city website too, but just having it even on Facebook, I mean, because anytime something happens, Cindy has posted something on that, and it just really.
The you're talking about, is that information about programs or information about invasive plants playing, and that they should just learn from the
Right,
site?
yeah, whatever.
Oh,
We should
both.
have
I mean,
a.
I saw something about Roundup and how dangerous Roundup is, and I posted that. So I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can do, but
To get it out there fast too, because,
Right.
Cindy
Yeah.
will post it being it's there.
James?
looking this stuff up, there's a lot of sites that aren't connected with these cities or states or counties or whatever. They are just organizations that put out their information on their website. And I'm sure we could probably link up to them. I mean, we may want to contact them and say, hey, the National Organization Against Invasive Species, which there's ones just about like that. You could call them and say, can we put that link on our site for
Right.
the city? And
Link
check
it
with the
to-
city and see if
right.
that's these sites that were just talked about. Is there a way to link that up? That way, we don't have to make this webpage.
Oh, I know.
It's already
It's done.
There,
It's done.
and that would be at least
Okay.
something we could do.
Somebody
pretty
like to
quick.
be, so we want to educate, okay, maybe we should have a motion about that we want to deal with invasive species in our community by doing doing educational outreach. And then we can find out who would like to help do that, because we can't make those decisions in here, and we need to maybe make a plan of some sort. Is that what would someone like to make a motion that you would like to continue working on invasive species by doing educational outreach? Or not?
If you're talking about just like using on the website, I mean, would you want to put that basically as like a subheading under, you were going to talk about like using these websites on the next meeting maybe, or, put that as something that people could cover, or do you want to do just total outreach?
I mean, I really hate for this whole group to have to make decisions that 2 or 3 people can research and make a plan and present it to us, unless you all want to work on that subject together as a group of the whole. Educational outreach, invasive species. If that's what you want to do, we can do that too. But it's up to you.
Well, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
You can shoot it down if you want. Since we just brought it up tonight, maybe we should wait till everybody go out and look at these sites, get an idea, think about this time, look at them and see what they think about them, and then come back and discuss it, because that may be the best way for people to see that sort of thing, and to have a lot more to discuss maybe next time.
But I'm hoping it's not just through electronic means. I was demonstrations and meetings, some kind of way to get people involved and get it in their face, that this is happening. Maybe brochures to the nursery industry about posters. But I was hoping we could come up with some kind of organized approach as to how to get the word out to the community, and of course, electronic media would be one of the parts of it, but not the whole part.
But you've done this already, something similar to this, correct,
They've
Cindy?
done 2 or 3 presentations, and also Frisco Trail. So,
I mean, we've done it. Our
there's been
committee's
about-
already
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying.
Cross spoke,
Right.
and part of the key is talking with Don Steinkraus, so many of the sites have lists, and they don't have any pictures.
Yeah.
And that's why we kept it pretty basic with a brochure and had pictures of the worst ones that we thought. Now, the problem with like posters and brochures is money.
Right.
Correct.
Where the social media is free. And I, as an individual, can say, remove this honeysuckle and have a picture of it. But that's also what we can do is say that Lauren has one of these weed whacker things through one of these social medias.
Borrow it, come borrow it.
Yeah.
We're doing it tomorrow, come watch.
So who would organize this, this thing, this attack, or this educational outreach? Or wait, would everybody like to think about that till next week and then come up that month and come up with ideas about what we can do related to invasive species, getting the word out to people and getting them involved and caring about them? Is that what you'd like to do? Because we'll have a long, there may be time in our next meeting, or plenty of time to talk, so. Okay, so do I need a motion? I mean, there's nothing to say. We just heard the report, and we can wait till the next month to talk about it some more, can we?
Maybe make some motions then.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. Okay, then the tree farm exploration is the second part of our committee business reports. And Shannon and Emily met with me and Greg, and a reporter was there at the site at the city that they think you could have a tree farm if we wanted. And Shannon, what did we learn that day?
That it's going to take a lot of work.
That's something about.
Okay. We need volunteers. We need to use these outreach programs and internet media to organize and get the word out. Really, that's pretty much where we're at. I mean,
I think what we're here to do is to see if the group wants to follow through and doing this thing, and what suggestions and ideas do we have as far as to make it go farther if we decided to.
I think what we talked about was having a public forum. One idea was having it at the farmer's market during the morning off to the side. We can introduce the public to the ideas, and also at the same time get email addresses, phone numbers, addresses, Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts to keep people notified of when and how, what labor we're going to need. And I think that's the first step, because it is labor intensive. And then the second idea proposed by, I believe it was Nancy, we have a group of about 30 to 40 individuals that are pretty gung-ho about anything that we propose, and they're able to get people available. And of course, that's helpful when we make propositions to the city council to have a list of names and people that are interested in developing these ideas, so it doesn't get drowned out with non-interest.
But also, wouldn't that be a wonderful opportunity to talk a bit about invasives and why we want to plant natives instead? Pull out the invasives and plant.
These trees are really for Greg's purpose of street trees, which wouldn't really take the place of invasives that much. I don't think so. These are good.
I mean, I provided a couple of months ago a list that was from the National Federal website where you could actually categorize Washington County, and it printed out a list of everything that the USDA feels is invasive to this area.
Oh.
And so that should be in some of your information previously. And then we do have the recommended or native tree list, which I'm going to be working on a page I'm going to work on that next quarter to get another web page up that has some of this information available. You can click on it and download as a PDF type of deal.
I'm just saying, any chance that we have with 30, 40 people to speak to them, to take 15 minutes and talk about invasives, and maybe some sources to get the weed whacker.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I mean, we don't have to be so narrow focused.
Right. Well, okay. The deal is, when we met as a subcommittee, Emily and Shannon and I and a couple of people from the city, as a subcommittee about the tree farm, after we went out to see the potential tree farm site and saw where the water pump would be and the water source and so on for the tree farm. And we came back a day or two later and met together, and we were trying to think, what's the next step? I guess we were trying to decide if it could possibly happen, if it's feasible. And I think Allison was going to check with the city. We wanted to find out what the city would supply besides the land and possible water source, if there's anything else they would supply, and then what we would need to wrap around that with, as far as the public would have to wrap around and supply other things. And so our purpose was, we were going to let Allison gather that information the next month or so, or a couple of weeks or whatever. But in the meantime, our group, we were either going to have a public education meeting, maybe in the library or whatever, and invite the whole world to come to a public session and decide whether or not they'd like to have a tree farm after explaining what we know about it, or Emily and Shannon thought it was a better idea, and it possibly is, that we should set up a table at the farmer's market on a Saturday. There's a place that we're allowed to do that, and talk with people one-on-one. Shannon's wife's going to make a poster, and we're going to have a sign-in sheet, and then there's about 5 categories of things that people could do that we're going to have them sign in that they say they'd either be willing to do or might do or whatever. Gather some, and then anyway, research how to these categories. I sent you this little thing, the 5 things they might sign up. This would be our little handout, or it could be something to explain what the purpose is. So we could gather names of people that are willing to do these things, or at least indicating they might be willing. And we'd also send the same information out to that list that we've been gathering from all our other doings. We have a list of followers, you might say. And we would put this out to the whole, this one-on-one thing at the farmer's market would be one way of outreach, but we would outreach every other way we could think of to see if there are other people that are interested in starting a tree farm and being willing to sign on, and I will do some of these things. And if we got enough support, then we could go to the city council and outline our plan and show our supporters and say, we think we can do this tree farm thing. We've got what we need, and by that time Allison's going to find out from the city what they will supply, so we'll know what we can wrap around. So what our deal was to come to you today and ask you, as the whole committee, whether you want us to proceed with this, or you think it's just a dumb idea, or I guess just to give us a go-ahead. And if you decide to give us a go-ahead, we actually had some dates kind of chosen, or to select among, that we are willing to show up at the farmer's market on a Saturday, and we're going to see if any of you wanted to show up with us. So anyway, bottom line, do you want us to proceed with a tree farm idea, or do you think that's too much to take on? Do it in the future sometime?
Well, I think exploration is fine. But you know, I think we're a lot ways away from the committee saying, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
But the exploration, I'm fine with.
The exploration is what this is all about, to see if there are the resources in the community, people, mainly people, that are want to do it well enough to say they will do it. That's what this is all about. It's not saying we are going to do it. It's going to say, you want to do it? Will you be part of it?
Well, I've always been for the idea of having a presence on the square during the farmers market. I mean, we could, if we want to get the message out about invasive species, we can do it there. I mean, again, I've said this before, but I can come up with a brochure, a 1-page, double-sided printed 3-fold brochure that you can just hand out. And you can just sit there and hand them out as many as you could print out.
About invasive species? Or did you,
sure,
you saw
invasive
Cindy's
species.
that she did?
Did you do one? Okay, I've not seen that one.
I can email it to the committee.
And we can just stand there and hand that out, and just stand there and tell them about our trees, and stand there and tell them about the celebration of trees, and tell them how great we are.
Yeah,
Come to our meeting. I mean,
Terrific.
because that is, I mean, we can certainly go, and I applaud anybody that goes to the library and sets up something and does a presentation. That's fantastic. It's really hard for me to do that sort of stuff. I'm so busy with everything else. But if, you know, I would be willing to stand on the corner at the square for a couple, 3 hours.
Right.
You know, I love going to the square anyways on Saturdays, and that is just a continuous, thousands of people go there every Saturday, I would imagine. I want to say at least 2,000 people every Saturday, probably more, I don't know. Whatever the count is. And some of them are going to just look at you, and some of them are going to walk over and they're going to interface with you. But I bet you get more than 50 people.
And we'll put the word out ahead of time. We're going to be there, show up and talk to us, that kind of thing.
And I think that is just a opportunity that we need to take advantage of as much as possible.
I think the city would be much more apt to give us the resources we need, the additional resources, if we can show them a list of 200 people that have committed to help with any degree of labor.
Yeah, or any of these other items.
Sure.
Not all labor. I mean, we don't want just labor.
I read the article in the paper about it and was really excited. I thought it sounded like a great idea. I remember a comment that was made was something about, was there going to be an issue with competing with local businesses? And I'm just wondering if that balloon went up, did you get any feedback? Like, do you think if you bring it farther along, there's going to be someone that, you know, oh, well, we don't really want you to, I don't know if anybody heard anything.
I got a call or two, but nobody about competing. One was a local contractor that said, a long time ago, the city told him to plant these Bradford pears, and he's so happy that we're getting on the wavelength that we shouldn't. I mean, he said, and they said, we have some of your plants, and I said, no, you'll be, unless you supply some of the goods and services, no plants for you. So, anyway.
No ranting people called for that.
No, they didn't. Because I think we said in the article that there aren't these. Greg will say that these are not available through other sources.
That's right.
Yeah, the type of species that we're looking at and so forth to get started with are those things that we have an extremely difficult time finding in the nursery trade to begin with. And you certainly aren't going to find them at a retail nursery. You might find them at some specialty nurseries, but you can only get them during certain times of year, or there's a limit to them, or they only come in sapling size, and we're looking for trees.
Right.
So there's these different species that are indigenous to this area that we would like to put back into this area, but we just can't find the species available from nurseries in any size to plant them. And there's also an issue with quality. We do have many trees that we get that we just can't find the quality of tree species. They're not well pruned from the nurseries. They don't have single leaders sometimes. And this isn't all species, it's not all nurseries, it's not all every tree that comes out of the nurseries. It's just, when we order, 400 trees, and 60 of them are one species and 120 are another species or something like that, it's very hard to find uniform stock. And so if we can raise it, put the time and energy into it, train some people in how to prune young trees, we're going to have a quality product when it's time to harvest that tree and then plant it out in the city in a park or right of way or something like that.
How about a couple of Ozark chicken?
If we'll try.
How much do y'all spend a year on trees, do you know? Do you have an idea how much you spend on every single tree that you buy in 1 year? What is your budget for that?
Well, it's not under one category. I mean, we have the horticulturists who have the different areas around the square, the rain gardens, the monument signs around the city. I don't see what they purchase, and sometimes they purchase cherry trees and smaller trees and so forth like that. Currently, in urban forestry, there is not a tree planting budget. We are planting trees, but that money comes out of the developmental fund, the tree escrow fund. So in that fund, next year, there is, I believe, $134,000.
See, I would think, and this is something I said when I brought this up, I don't know, a year ago, I was like, why does the city have a tree farm? And the reason I thought that is because I would think it would be cheaper to grow a tree than to buy a tree, if you could get it going.
Well, in theory, that is correct, particularly if we can do it with volunteer labor. There are certain species, some of the red maple varieties and something like that, that are cheap enough and their quantities are high enough in the area that I can go out and buy those and not have to wait till dig season or something like that. I can usually get those fairly easily. Those are the things we don't want to grow. What we want to grow are those things that we either have to wait a long time to be able to harvest and get, or those things that we just can't find in anything over a seedling size, or we can't find at all.
Yeah.
Well, a really strange question. On the tree farm, if you plant the tree in the ground, you're going to have it, then harvest it, you may be cutting some of the main root systems of it. So I'm assuming if you have a tree farm, you're going to have to grow it in some sort of a contained area, so you'll be able to lift it out of, as far as growing the tree, getting it growing, getting it big, and then transporting it. So that's one of the issues that's an issue way, way, way down the road. But still, you have to have it in an area where you can grow it and then transport it, besides cutting it.
And that's one of the things we put kind of on the list of part of this exploration. What kind of tree farm will work best here? When you're dealing with volunteers, what typically happens if you grow trees in the ground and it's time to harvest them, you have to go out and literally dig the root ball up, tilt it back and forth, get a burlap under it, get that burlap over it, put twine around it to hold that together, and be able to pick that up. And that weighs several hundred pounds. And so that is a hard thing to ask volunteers to do. So the idea is, well, maybe you can grow them in what you're kind of talking about, is what's called a grow bag. And that is a bag that is, the roots can't get out of. It goes in the soil, trees planted in it, and then at some point in the future, you're able to pull that bag, loosen the soil around it, and pull that bag out, and the roots are all self-contained in it. But there's an expense. Those root bags are not free, and so you have this added expense. The other option is to grow things in a container. And we would typically, if you went that route, you would have a container, usually a tree that would buy as a sapling, would start out in a 1 gallon container. It would need to be stepped up after 1 year into a 3 gallon container, and then make the decision to go to a 7 gallon container, and then probably a 15 or a 30 gallon container, depending on the trees and the roots. So every time you step that tree up, that's work, that's labor involved.
Right.
Okay?
Plus also say that container grown trees they're always problematic, almost always. That's why the root system, when you grow them like that, they go round and round and round. Put them in another thing, they go round and round. A lot of times you get trees that the roots are not well formed.
Well, that's if they're pot bound. If they're grown and used within a certain period of time, you don't have that problem. And containerized plants can be planted any time of year, and will do much better during the middle of the summer if you have to plant them than a ball and burlap. Because you have to remember, when you dig that out of the ground, you're taking 80–90% of the root system away from the tree and sticking it in the ground and then saying grow. And with a containerized plant, you would be able to take its 100% of its root system and put it there. But you do have the probability of hurtling roots, which then you do have to do a little work when you plant it to kind of cut anything that's starting to circle or so.
So this is not something we can decide here today. This is one of the things, as Greg said, that we were asking people to sign up and help us learn about, research how to start and run a tree farm. And he's given us 3 places to check locally, I mean in the state and in Missouri, and whoever does this, whoever people agree to help do this, they'll be checking into ways to do all of this. We don't have to decide it now.
And I was going to say, when I first thought about this idea, I thought maybe the city would have some sort of, I would think you need some sort of horticulturalist to be there to kind of monitor things at the very least.
Well, we certainly want that. That would be one of the things else will let us know. If they'll help.
Just so you are not wasting your energies and end up with a lot of dead trees.
Exactly.
Just an added thought to another person to go to talk to is in Little Rock, their urban forester.
No,
would be the
Patty? Or no, that's the state, isn't it?
Yeah, Patty's with the state. This is the, I just had his name a few
Oh.
seconds
Yeah,
ago.
I know.
I'm sorry.
Little Rock Urban Forester.
Yeah, Little Rock. Robbie. I can't remember his last name, but Robbie.
Well, that would be whoever's going to do this research, they would get a hold of that person, or those people, whoever they are. Do you guys agree or want to, as a committee, go ahead and pursue more information about how to have a tree farm, and some of you want to participate in some of the public outreach we do? All who do want to do this, or is there a motion that we do this? Maybe not.
I so move.
Here's a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
There's Emily seconding it. All right, a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the subject of whether we should pursue having a tree farm? If not, all in favor of it, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. And now, what we would like to do you agree that we do have a date at the farmer's market some Saturday? We'd like to set that date today if we might, and we brought a calendar. Some of us already knows what day we can come. Can I tell you some days that are possible?
Yeah.
Let's see, we talked about June, the last 28th.
We're going to incorporate this idea for the invasive species pamphlet during this time.
Anyone can bring them if they want to.
Okay.
I mean, me, I like to focus on that, but.
Okay.
Nancy, I believe the date was June 25th.
June the 25th was the date, and then in August, I'm going to be gone a lot. I mean, I don't have to be there, but I'm saying I can be there on the 2nd of August or June 25th are the 2 days I know about. Shannon's out of town all of July, so there's
July, yeah.
all of July. I mean, none of us all have to be there, but let's try to find a date that most of us can be there. How many people would like to actually help sometime during that day, during a day at the farmer's market? Let's get that out, and then we can work backwards toward a date. Okay, we got Lacey, Lois, let's get this down.
I would help, but those 2 dates are not good for me.
Oh dear. Lois, Emily, if we have the right date, Shannon.
Just in June.
And James said he might. James, anybody else got any ideas about wanted to help for an hour or two at the farmer's market, we'll trade off. We don't have to all be there the whole time. And any committee members any members of the public that might want to help? Get the word out?
I think I could help with that.
Okay.
I think the 25th of June would work for me, but I need to double check that.
Okay, I've already forgotten your name. I'm sorry.
Christine Haller.
Okay. Okay.
Haller.
Okay. So, any other comments regarding dates? Lacey, what are good for you?
I'm good for either of those dates that you mentioned, yeah.
I can't do June or July.
Could you do August 6th? James, any ideas about dates for
I'm
you?
good with those. Those are fine.
Shannon?
Just in June.
Oh, just in July. Oh, you can only do June.
Just in June.
You cannot do the July
I
date.
cannot do the July date.
Oh my goodness, we're getting kind of complicated. And Emily, what dates can you?
I can't do either June 25th or August 6th. I'll be out of town for both of those. But I think, how many people?
There are enough of us here that can.
Yeah, it sounds like the June 25th date would work for a lot of people. I mean, how many people said that they would help?
Who said no for June 25th? Shannon said no.
No, I said, who said yes for
No,
June?
ask who said yes for June 25th.
June 25th, yes. Lois cannot.
Okay, so 4 of us.
Okay.
5, 1, 2.
That's a good
I'm sorry,
representation.
okay, 5. Yeah, that's
That'd
great.
be okay?
And, yeah.
Everybody that's involved? So let's set June 25th as the date. We're going to do that.
6 a.m., is that the deal?
She said 6:45, I think she said. But we don't all have to be there then. I'll get everybody's email list and one of us will, and we'll coordinate by email as to how and when we're going to do this thing. How about that? That'd be okay? And Shannon's wife's going to make a poster.
Need a poster to have.
And I'll make a sign-in sheet that elicits people's interests. And if you have any other ideas what we should have there, we'll get some of those brochures, the invasive species brochures. Anyway, we'll work by email. The rest, if you want to see the emails on that, in case you have ideas or thoughts about what should happen that day.
Sure.
Would you like? Shall I send the whole?
I'm out of town that day.
Okay.
And I have a planting group, a volunteer group. We usually plant on Saturdays, so
Okay.
I just can't volunteer on Saturdays.
I understand that, but would you like to see what's happening and kind of keep, and the rest of you like to hear too, in case there's something you want to suggest? Okay, we'll send all our committee stuff out to everybody on this subcommittee, and people can say what they want to do. Alrighty, is that all we need to talk about urban forest planning right now? Is there any other business we need to talk about today?
You on C or A?
Yikes, I thought A,
7C or?
I'm on C.
Okay.
And Greg, I heard Betty say something earlier about, she thought our name has changed as a group. Has it or has not it?
That has not gone before city council yet.
Okay. So we're still the Tree Landscape Advisory Committee? Okay. Okay, if there's no other business, do I hear a motion that we adjourn?
Good night.
Oh, sorry.
I was just wondering, Director Cindy, is there any EDC business that would be of interest to the group or anything going on with environmental council?
I'm personally working with the school habitat, and we have 8 schools now certified as wildlife habitats. And we have been presenting kits, and the mayor comes to virtually every certification presentation for a whole school. And we give them books, magnifying glasses, and things on birds and snakes and why they're important for the habitat. We have a project going at Butterfield Trail, and we just have been there all day planting and unloading compost. So we've made a really special habitat area, and we're working on that.
Great.
Another one, Environmental Action Committee is, there is a graduate student going to several prairie areas that are all city property and checking species, primarily insects that are using native plants. Gives an idea of how effective and how what percentage of native plants and how effectively being utilized there. And that includes World Peace Wetland Prairie and the Woolsey Wet Prairie, and then the portion of land, I believe it's, correct me, maybe the land back toward the stream there that's also part of the sewage treatment plant. And she had been Lake Fayetteville prairie restoration areas on that list. So there's students going there a couple of times a month, each of them, and recording what's there. And the Lake Fayetteville's behind them. Lake Fayetteville's the one that needs the most restoration right now. Of course, it's newly cleared for that. If I may say, on that publication thing, while I've got the floor for a second, we really need a combination, not only the invasives listed as you did so well on that other one, but we need native plant yards touted. This resolution the council made a couple of years ago saying that people could have a native plant yard, not have, they don't have to have a monocultural lawn, and this eliminates mowing if you've got nothing but natives growing in there, and they're certifiably effective. And that also means that you're qualified to get the National Wildlife Federation certification, which the council also passed a resolution supporting, and that's an initiative from the Environmental Action Committee. And of course, the streamside protection ordinance, best management suggests you have native plants down near the streams in that last, certainly in the 25 feet. And best management, they don't require it. See, that was the chance to require native plants, and it didn't happen. But all those three things the council has strongly supported, voted in support of the use of native plants and encourage people to utilize them. And by implication, in the riparian ordinance, it says that you may not, I believe, Greg, correct me on this, you may remove non-native species from the riparian zone. But it doesn't authorize you, it doesn't certainly encourage you to remove the natives. And this is a hard thing for people to get their heads around in public education. And one other thing on the presentation we were talking about earlier, the native thistles are not included in the eradication program for most states. It's about 3 non-native thistles that are listed, so you don't have to get rid of all thistles. I had a neighbor doing that a couple of years ago, and I was like, well, this is native. But once you say thistles, and you can do that with many plants when you start, you name a category, like honeysuckle. You've got native honeysuckle vines that are very valuable and so forth. And of course, weeds are often, just what people don't like, but so many are important, like milkweed.
If we would call it something different, it would really help, like the real name, Asclepius.
Asclepius incarnata, Asclepius tuberosa, and one of mine had 2 caterpillars, which are online.
Greg, he's mentioned twice, and I've wondered about it myself, the city ordinance that allows people to use native plants. Could you find that and send me that information, or maybe everybody would like to know that, in case it's something we want to get more, get out to the public better. That maybe there's an ordinance apparently already on the books
that removes the mowing requirement.
Yeah, and maybe it says something about encourage, I don't know what it says. We'll find out when he sends it to us.
Yeah, it's very limited. It's just like a paragraph and a half a paragraph, actually. It's not very long. It's called Sustainable Yards Ordinance, and it's actually, it's not in the landscaping code. It was actually, I'm not sure where it went in the code, but I know it has more to do with our code enforcement people and giving them the availability to have some leeway with citing people for having unsightly yards. Because we had some individuals who had yards that were planted with native plants and had done some things to encourage, getting rid of the lawn and things like that. Their neighbors were complaining because they didn't meet the code as it was written for code compliance, for not having anything, I think, over 18 inches, 8 inches height or something like that. And so this was a way to allow for people to have those types of landscaping. So it's sustainable.
So there's not really much to educating one about, except that
Yeah,
that's
it's-
okay to
it's-
have a 8-inch.
It's available, I will send out to everybody, but also if you want to look at it before I get it out to you, if you go to the strategic planning webpage, I believe it's under sustainability now. If you go to strategic planning, you go to their webpage, there's a long list on the left-hand side of all the different projects that they've worked on or are working on, and one of those will be sustainable yard.
Okay.
And just click on that and that'll take you to the information for that.
Okay, I guess it would be just good for us to know what exists is related to
Yes.
that as far as the city's concerned. Is there a motion for us to adjourn at this point?
I so move.
Any seconds?
Second.
Do we all agree? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank